Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed, for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free Second Look review. Second Look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and we have made it to NFL free agency. Technically, it begins on Wednesday, but the legal tampering period begins tomorrow morning on Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 Eastern on the East Coast, and we have a special edition of the show, an NFL free agency prediction show coming your way. Going to talk about which players could San Francisco sign, could Brandon Ayuk get traded, will they trade away Jordan Mason, and much, much more coming your way. You're going to want to stay tuned for this and not miss a single second. All of that coming up right here on 49ers Access. Let's kick things off with the day the NFL had thus far, because I know free agency hasn't begun yet, but there have been so many moves, many of them impacting what the San Francisco 49ers can do once free agency begins, and maybe even more so the 2025 regular season for the San Francisco 49ers. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let's talk about the crazy day the NFL has had so far pre-free agency in 2025. And let's start with two massive wide receiver acquisitions and departures. The first one being Davante Adams is going to the Los Angeles Rams. And when I tell you I told you so, I'm telling you, I told you so. This was a clear as day. This was going to happen. They're going to get rid of Cooper Kupp. They're going to bring back Stafford. They're going to plug in Davante Adams. He is an instant upgrade over Cooper Kupp and who he is now. He got paid big money. San Francisco had no chance to get a deal done with Davante Adams. If you watch and listen to the show, you know I have been all in on Davante Adams to the Rams or the Chargers. It makes the most sense. He fits there so equally. Just a great fit for Los Angeles, which inevitably stinks for San Francisco. However, it's going to be very fun to watch Lenore and Renardo Green get to try to lock up Puka Nacua and Davante Adams twice next year. It's a great move for the Rams, who I've seen many Niner fans out there of like, oh, the Rams are being aggressive and they're getting all these stars. It's like, well, the Rams are in a win now mode. Like, this is their window to maximize the last 2 years or so of Matthew Stafford. So, they want to maximize this. There's no promise that if Matthew Stafford retires in, let's say, 2 years' time, which is the end of the Davante Adams contract, that Sean McVay doesn't walk away either. So this is them trying to maximize the current window they have, and getting Davante is a massive get for them. The chemistry in which Stafford and Adams will have next year, I think, will be incredible. Now, Stafford has to stay healthy, which I think the Rams are going to do their darndest to improve their offensive line this year. However, I think when you look at what they're doing offensively, like, they're not going to miss a step. They are going to be the same old Rams with Stafford being on point, moving in the pocket with the arm slots and stuff. And instead of having Cooper Kupp, I can argue it's an upgrade to get Davante Adams. So a big deal for the Rams there. A rather expected move that was made by the Rams this offseason. The second one is a rather sad one if you are a Niner fan, because you're not going to see Lenore and Green and this Niners defense get to frustrate the hell out of DK Metcalf. He was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm like, wow, receivers, awesome. Oh, crap. I have to deal with George Pickens and Davante Adams. Then they extended DK Metcalf, will make about $33 million. Now, I know this won't sound great, but he's making more than Brandon Ayuk is, which when they're healthy, I think it is clear as day who's a more impactful player, that being Brandon Ayuk. But good for DK, good for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's going to stink. The Seahawks are a wild card now. They may want Matthew Stafford. Geno Smith is gone. DK is gone. They may try to go and trade for a quarterback. Maybe they get aggressive and go after Shedeur Sanders, or it's Jackson Dart. Maybe, just maybe, the rumor mill is correct and Aaron Rodgers could find his way to the Pacific Northwest this offseason. Then on the defensive side of things, Jamie Sherwood, a rather consensus backup plan to Dre Greenlaw, is going back to the New York Jets on a massive 3-year deal. Good for him. Young player. He is a fireball of energy. I think he would have been a great signing. Even if they, I could see a way where San Francisco wanted to bring in Sherwood other than Greenlaw, knowing the injury Greenlaw has. That said, good for him. Goes back to the Jets and limits what San Francisco can do at the linebacker position this offseason. Then Harold Landry goes to the Patriots, and I was going back and forth with fans on Twitter about this because they were saying, oh, Harold Landry's great, and why did San Francisco not buy in and pay him? Harold Landry's a really great run defender. His pass rushing tape last year was absolutely atrocious. If you're a PFF guy, he had about a 44.8 PFF pass rushing grade. I get he had 9 sacks. He's one of those players where the box score really doesn't dictate how bad he was last year. There's a reason why the Tennessee Titans, who are a rebuilding team, got rid of a 28-year-old edge rusher with almost 10 sacks. That tells you everything you need to know. He goes to a team that really fits him. Mike Vrabel's the Patriots head coach now. But Harold Landry, I don't know why fans wanted him. I think it was clear as day as to why the Titans said, not our guy anymore, not our problem. And I think if you wanted Harold Landry, I think this is a massive sigh of relief he didn't sign with San Francisco. Wasn't a good scheme fit. Just not a great player anymore. I'm sorry, not a great player. But arguably, the biggest news was the Josh Allen extension he got, which kind of shocked some people, albeit, yes, it was coming, but didn't think it would be today, of all days. Thought it happened closer to week 1 of the NFL season, but he got a 6-year, $330 million extension with $250 million guaranteed. Now, seeing Josh Allen, who is probably the third or second best now an MVP quarterback in the NFL, get $55 million per year, albeit the average annual value isn't the biggest deal for Brock Purdy. I think it's a pretty good sign where Brock's probably going to fall under now, which is probably below $55 million per year, so a good thing for Brock Purdy. However, we don't have the fully guarantees just yet, but when you see $250 million guaranteed, that tells me that Brock is probably going to fall closer to about a 3-year deal, maybe a 4-year deal, but I think it's going to be a 3-year, 150. Maybe you get to about $155 million. Maybe it's a 4-year deal. I think the average will be about $53 million, $52 million a year. And I think you'll see about 180 guaranteed, probably below what Trevor Lawrence got and Joe Burrow got. I think that makes the most sense. It might make San Francisco more comfortable that way. And I think Josh Allen's contract actually helps the Niners get more leverage over Brock Purdy in this case. But forget the rest of the NFL for a hot second. Let's dive into the San Francisco 49ers because they have a lot of impending moves they have to make. The San Francisco 49ers, I think, are in one of the more tricky spots when it comes to the NFL. And while, yes, they have currently $34 million in cap space, we've heard all these organizational shift conversations. We heard about, them maybe not wanting to be as aggressive this offseason. And with that comes the rumors, the thought that they could also start to shedding all these contracts, right? Rebrand, renew, recast, if you will, this roster. And I think we have to start with what the San Francisco 49ers could do this offseason when it comes to their own roster and the current players on it. Now, we know at this point in time that Javon Hargrave will get cut with the post-June 1st designation starting on Wednesday. this week. We know that Talanoa Hufanga is a free agent, Charvarius Ward's a free agent, and others along the way, but there are also bigger names like Leonard Floyd, who is, at this point in time, this team's number 2 edge rusher. I think he stays put. I think they want to retain him. They may shop him to a certain extent, but with the bigger contracts that the defensive ends are getting on the open market, again, Harold Landry got $15 million a year. Leonard Floyd's way under that, at like $11 million, so I expect they're going to want to keep him at that price. Maybe they'll add some void years, redo his contract, but I think Floyd stays put. I think they keep Yetur Gross-Matos. The bigger one is Maliek Collins, who was reported earlier today to have been released by the team. Not official just yet, according to Matt Mayoko and Jennifer Lee Chan. They are trying to trade him before they inevitably cut him, I believe, on Wednesday. So they're trying to get a deal done. He was acquired last year for a 7th round pick, but a very durable player, a player that, although isn't a run defender, is a really good pass rusher. And I think this team views him as maybe a team like the Titans or Philadelphia, or maybe a team like, I don't know, say the Texans, who may want him back next year. I think there are teams who will value Maliek Collins. There was a report earlier today, I'm forgetting by who, that his market will be strong, which I think is a good thing for San Francisco, knowing that, hey, forget the free agency crap. You can get him in your building now. Give us a 6th-round pick next year, or a 6th-round pick, and whatever they want to do it with. I think Maliek Collins should and will get traded. However, he's going to be gone. I think it's time. I think it's a good move. They want to avoid his roster bonus due, I think, on like March 16th or whatever. So they're going to free some money up. Again, get rid of some cash, free up some cap. And I think it's a good decision by them, right? You want to get younger. This draft class is stacked with defensive tackles. And if you move off of Maliek Collins now, although you have one of the worst defensive line rooms in football with Kalia Davis and Evan Anderson and Jordan Elliott being your only 3 guys, I think it is clear as day as to where maybe San Francisco's mindset may be on April's draft later on this year and in next month. Jalen Moore, their backup left tackle, who was actually really good last year in relief of Trent Williams. He got hurt last year late, filling in for Williams, but was really good when he first took over. He's going to get big money. We're talking like $15-14 million per year. He deserves to start wherever he goes. Not sure where it'll be, but there is this idea. This is the theory that Moore is going to get probably San Francisco a pretty good compensation pick next year. And I really would not be shocked to see it happen. I think he deserves to start, but it puts San Francisco somewhat in a bind because they only have, I think, 2 tackles on the roster, Colton McKivitz and a 37-year-old Trent Williams. So they're really going to have to sign a tackle or, I think, draft a few at the NFL draft in April. That brings us to 2 of the people in the backfield of this offense, Kyle Juszczyk and Jordan Mason. These are tough because both of these players are big contributors, although in very different ways. This team, I think, values both of these players at a high level, albeit Jordan Mason, to me, is more expendable than Kyle Juszczyk. However, Kyle Juszczyk's money complicates things for a team that wants to shed some money, that wants to get cheaper. I think that Juszczyk to this team, the locker room is much more valuable than Jordan Mason is. I think you can find a Jordan Mason 2.0 or his replacement come the draft, and even in free agency, depending on who you sign. That said, I think Jordan Mason is going to get traded. I think this team will place a 2nd-round tender on Jordan Mason, and he is going to get traded this offseason. I think there are teams like the Chargers, teams like the Broncos, maybe a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who is probably going to lose Najee Harris. I think a lot of teams are going to want agenc in a very, very deep running back class. I think it's really important to get the number 1 guy in the room. Well, I don't think Jordan Mason can be that number 1 guy. I don't think he's the bell cow back you want to lead your running back room. I think he's a very valuable number 2. And I think if San Francisco places that 2nd-round tender on him, it gives them time to find a trade partner. I think a team like, again, the Broncos, who are picking at 20 this year, probably not going to be in the business of drafting a first-round running back unless you want to go Marion Hampton from UNC. I think they want agenc, but the Seahawks may want him. The Raiders might want him. There's going to be some teams vying for agenc, while Jordan Mason, I think, in this draft class would probably be running back 5 or 6 at this point in time in his career. That usually equates to a second or third round pick, but in this case, I think you trade Jordan Mason for probably a 5th round pick. He's a really good player. He's still young. I think they'll get something for him. I think they are in this process of trying to get younger and cheaper. I think a second round tender makes sense for him, then trade him. I don't think they're going to get a second round pick for him, as Niner Media says or asks here in the YouTube chat. That's more of a, if somebody else signs him, they have to give you a second round pick. Whereas you can put him on a second round tender. He has kind of a set contract for you, and it gives you time, and usually kind of steers teams away from signing that player. It happened to Jawan Jennings and others. This is more along those lines of like, look, we're going to set kind of a base for you of salary, and if we can move you for something else, we'll do that. So I think it gets traded to the Broncos, the Chargers. Maybe a team like the Dolphins gets involved. Raheem Mostert's getting cut. Jeff Wilson really isn't a player out there. You like Davante, but you never know. If the Bills don't re-sign James Cook to a big deal, I wonder if that's the case. The Dallas Cowboys can also make some sense for San Francisco, and surprisingly, San Francisco has no problem giving them players. Trey Lance went there for a 4th round pick a couple years ago, and if the Cowboys don't get Genty, they're kind of in a spot where they could miss out on the number 2 back in Marion Hampton in this draft class, so that can lead to Jordan Mason maybe being a fit for Dallas next year, which would suck, but if you get a 4th or a 5th round pick back, then who cares when it's all said and done. I think if you're San Francisco, you realize that day 2 of this draft is kind of the home run area of this draft. Round 1's great, pick 11's awesome, but the more picks you can get inside that top 100, I think is really important. Even next year's class probably projects to be a little better overall. However, as things stand currently, where San Francisco only has 3 defensive tackles, and Jordan Elliott, I would not be shocked if he also gets cut this offseason as well to free up some money. They could walk into free agency and the draft process with 2 defensive tackles, which is terrifying. So I think if you can get 3 or 4 or 5, or if you get lucky and you get something back for whoever you trade, 5, day 2 picks in the top 100, I think that you can get a lot on day 2. There's so much value there, from cornerbacks to receivers to defensive tackles, running backs. This team, for maybe as crazy, as chaotic as things have been the last week or so leading into free agency, I think they can really reshape their roster. And for maybe as downtrodden as the ego or as the feelings around the team are, I think this is a really good place for San Francisco to get day 2 draft picks. You are going to hit many home runs if you do in this draft. Kyle Juszczyk, though, I have a hard time believing that Kyle Juszczyk wants to play elsewhere, yet he admitted that it could have been his last year, in San Francisco. I think that when you look at how old he is, the contract he has, I think they're open to asking him for a second pay cut. He may take that personally, which maybe could piss him off and say, trade me or cut me, whatever. I don't think you'd save enough money. I think Kyle Juszczyk will remain untouched this offseason. I think he should remain untouched. However, there is a couple people in the draft. Let's say San Francisco values that second tight end more this year, which usually isn't the case. But again, we are in this recalibration period of this offense and this team. They could not value Kyle Juszczyk as much as they used to, which would be shocking to me. However, fullbacks aren't valued too much. And I can see this being the end of Kyle Juszczyk. But if I'm predicting something, I don't think it'll happen. I think he'll be here this year. I think this will be his last year in San Francisco. And I think that you will see Kyle Juszczyk at the age of 33 play one final year in the red and gold. And whether he hangs it up or not, I think this will be his last year with the 49ers. Papa J asks here, when it comes to free agency, could you see Talanoa Hufanga going to the Houston Texans if they move away from him? I know San Francisco wants to bring back Hufanga. I think that's a rather unwise decision. I get it. Former All-Pro, 5th-round pick, energy, electric player, but bad coverage skills. Last year wasn't a great tackler. Although I like him a lot, I don't think he'll be back. I don't think that he's going to be back at all. I don't think that his market's going to be this massive thing. I know Javon Holland will probably get big money. I'd probably watch out for the Jets for him. But I think Talanoa Hufanga's best fit is probably the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that makes some sense for him. Go back home to SoCal, where he played college at USC. I don't think he'll be too expensive. My thought is 3 years, $18 million, or 3 years, $30 million. I think paying Talanoa Hufanga $10 million isn't a gamble San Francisco would make, but for a team wanting to win now and get a playmaker on defense, I think it could make some sense for the Chargers. I also just think San Francisco is in a position where they have to get younger, less injured, and kind of play a different brand of football. And while I do think that Hufanga fits Saleh's defense, I don't think he fits it as well as Mustafa or Ajayi Brown does. Don't forget, Saleh does value a free safety. I know San Francisco doesn't play free and strong safety, but I think, he does value a free safety. Jimmy Ward was there for a reason, great coverage skills. I think that the Niners are going to not overvalue, but I think you are going to see maybe a more concentrated effort into getting a free safety, or at least a coverage player this year, which, Renee, I see your question here when it comes to Julian Blackmon. I'm going to talk about Julian Blackmon later towards the end of the show, so I'm not going to spoil it for you now. But because we talked about the linebacker situation.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
Niner Media asks here, backup plan at linebacker for the Jets now that they have re-signed Jamien Sherwood. I also have one of those coming up as well, so stay tuned. We're going to get to it in a second because I do want to let you know to use our promo code 49ers Access, 49ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Okay. Let's get into my San Francisco 49ers 2025 free agency predictions. Going to go through almost every single position, talk about some big names, talk about some small names, talk about some sleepers, some gems, and talk about some of the players you want to come to San Francisco in 2025, and if I see it likely or not this off season. Okay. Let's start at the quarterback position. We all know Brock Purdy is the guy, whether it's for 3 years, whether it's for 1 year, whether it is for no years, right? Brock Purdy's going to be in San Francisco this year. They like Brock Purdy a lot. He'll be the guy. The only question is for how long and for how much. But the bigger question is, who is going to back up Brock Purdy in 2025? This team has Tanner Mordecai currently as their quarterback 2. I like Tanner Mordecai enough, but not enough to make him a quarterback 2. If he's a quarterback 3, that's fine. I think San Francisco needs to improve that room, and I think there's a really easy solution here. Although some viable names out there, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, the guy I wanted, Jarrett Stidham, got re-signed by the Broncos today. So we pivot and we go to a quarterback that has already apparently garnered interest from San Francisco this offseason, that being Joe Flacco. I know he's older. I know he's going to be 40 years old this offseason, but he's a player that knows how to win. He beat this Niners team in a Super Bowl about 14 years ago. He's been playing for a long time. He can play on time, still has the arm. Mobility isn't great, but I think Joe Flacco raises your room, and if Brock Purdy misses time, can give you a little more than, say, Brandon Allen could last year. And we saw 2 years ago, Joe Flacco raised and almost carried the Browns to the playoffs and past the Texans a couple years back. So I think that Joe Flacco is the San Francisco 49ers backup this year. It would not be the first time San Francisco wanted to sign Joe Flacco back in, I think, 2021 or 2022. They wanted to bring him in there. So stars are aligning finally. He's a free agent. I don't see many teams vying for Joe Flacco as a potential starter, but I do think as a highly valuable backup, Joe Flacco makes plenty of sense in San Francisco, with Tanner Mordecai, I think, waiting in the wings to maybe in 2 years' time become this team's QB2 for Brock Purdy. I don't see San Francisco playing a big, or being a big player in the running back market. Obviously, you have Jordan Mason. You're probably going to trade this offseason. But if you don't trade him, you bring him back, and that's cool as well. Although I think he gets moved. Probably the better move for them to trade him away. I don't think they're going to be signing these big-name players, or like you already have Christian McCaffrey. You like Grendo. Maybe they bring back Patrick Taylor. I think maybe if they're smart, maybe you take a look at like Kenneth Gainwell, who was in Philadelphia, who's a really small back but really powerful. I think he can be viable, pretty good pass blocker and run blocker as well. So, however, I don't think they're going to sign a like number 2 back this offseason, especially knowing that Kyle gets his pick of the litter in this draft class. This is a loaded draft class, whether it is Kyle Monangai or Khalil Mullings, or it is Damian Martinez or Dylan Sampson or so many other running backs. Kyle's going to just be like, oh my God. Like, I can pick whoever I want in round 2 and 3 and 4. So again, day 2, early day 3 is that hot spot, that sweet spot for this draft class. I think that's where Kyle will value running back, and I think he should. You have Grendo, you like Christian McCaffrey, obviously, but I think this team could benefit from a younger 22-year-old, 21-year-old back. I think Monangai makes a lot of sense from Rutgers. Khalil Mullings, Damian Martinez from Miami. There's too many good running backs in this draft class who I think use valuable financial assets to sign a player. Elijah Mitchell's gone. Jordan Mason probably traded, and I think they're going to walk into the draft with about 2 to 3 running backs. But again, you know Kyle, he may sign three UDFAs and say, "Oh, look what I got in my back pocket." He can make the worst running back ever somehow into treasure. So I don't think they'll spend any assets on running backs this year. But if I had to pick somebody, I'd be really interested to see what they do with Kenneth Gainwell, who I think could be actually like a really nice, solid player for them if they wanted to sign a running back this offseason. Let's go to receiver, though, for a second, because the receiver room has been arguably the most talked about thing, maybe outside of Brock Purdy this offseason. Obviously, Brock's contract is very controversial, whereas the wide receiver room has become its own thing, whether it's Deebo Samuel getting traded or it's Brandon Ayuk getting traded. I don't think Brandon Ayuk is going to get traded. That is my prediction for him. I think he stays put. I don't think that Ayuk is that valuable on the open market or on the trade market. I think it is really important that despite how crappy they may have been talking about him, how disgruntled they may be, I think you really, really need to have Brandon Ayuk on this team this year. Whether it is to have him be a contributor for you or at least get him back later in the year, have him build that value up, then trade him next year. I think he's on this team, but the question is, how do you get to Brandon Ayuk? Whether he comes back in November, in December, late October, you have to have the pieces in place to get to Brandon Ayuk. And I think there's 2 names out there. We've heard a third, but I think there is 2 names out there that, when you take into account how this organization's running things, not wanting to be uber expensive, They just traded away Deebo Samuel, so the odds they sign another big-name free agent are really slim, hence why I never thought they were going to sign Davante Adams this offseason. We've heard some Keenan Allen rumors out there. I don't know if that's going to happen. He played college football at California, played for the Chargers for a long time. Maybe he wants to come back for a year. A very valuable and still viable receiver for the Bears last year, 70 receptions. So there's still some good play in him. However, I think San Francisco is in kind of the Band-Aid area for receiver. They want to kind of bridge themselves to Brandon Ayuk, and you're going to hate this, but I think that the number one choice in my prediction that I think who they will sign this offseason is Robert Woods. And I don't like that. I think it makes some sense, but I'd rather sign somebody else, and we'll get to them in a second. However, Robert Woods is the ultimate Band-Aid. He's 33 years old. He knows the system, played under Sean McVay last year with DeMeco Ryans and Bobby Sloak with the Houston Texans. He's an historically really great run blocker, which, you know, Kyle Shanahan, if you're not going to be a good receiver, be a great run blocker for me. I think Woods can be that for this offense. He'll probably be a primary slot receiver, which moves Juwan and Pearsall to the outside, which I think makes a lot of sense. And I also think this team simply has to draft a wide receiver. I think if they do that, signing Robert Woods makes more sense than simply just signing Woods and getting nobody else. I get they may like Isaiah Hodgins and Tariq Owens, and they might. And if they do like all of those players behind their current starting 3 or 2, Woods makes more sense even then, right? Not a great receiver anymore. 22 receptions last year for 225 yards and no touchdowns. However, he can play inside. He can play outside. To me, he is, at the moment, if they signed him today, this team's number 3 receiver, with the hopes of Jacob Cowing growing into that role and usurping him during the year. Or maybe it is Tariq Owens, or it's Isaiah Hodgins, or it is, I'm hoping, an incumbent draft pick they select in April. So I think Woods will be who they sign. Do I love that? Not necessarily, because I do think, although Woods is my prediction for them, so it's Flacco and Woods as my 2 first predictions in the free agency period, I think this team, with where they're at currently, although may not be wanting to take risks, I think it may benefit them a lot to take a long and hard look at Elijah Moore. And I get it that Elijah Moore, if you look at what he did with the Cleveland Browns, really doesn't rub me the right way simply because he had some character issues, some off-the-field stuff that, albeit, wasn't like assaulting somebody, from my understanding. There was some character issues inside the building, not outside the building, so it wasn't like terrible, but I do think there are some drawbacks to bringing him in. However, Elijah Moore has the skill set that Kyle Shanahan values to be a wide receiver in his offense. I talked a lot about him during the trade deadline, a lot of similar drawbacks then to where there are now. I think if San Francisco wants a higher upside wide receiver while not committing a large amount of money to a player, I think Elijah Moore could be that. Again, former second-round pick of the New York Jets a couple years ago before being moved to the Cleveland Browns. There are character issues that I think maybe could hold San Francisco back from signing him, but he seems to be a little more focused as of last year, and I think he would fit this scheme extremely well. Last year had 97 targets for a terrible Browns team, had 67 receptions, 538 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's a player that eats over the middle, and one of the biggest things, and I'll ask you guys this too, what was one of the biggest drawbacks to San Francisco's receiver room last year? I'll wait. 1, 2, 3. They couldn't separate. Elijah Moore is one of the best separators in football. He averaged 3.1 yards of separation per reception last year. That's on par with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Ladd McConkey, Davante Adams, and Cooper Kupp. A lot of players I just named are players that you'd covet on this Niners team if they were on the open market. So I think Elijah Moore makes a lot of sense, and although he isn't the greatest run blocker, he's decent enough where the no block, no rock conversation really would not be a factor. I think Moore makes a ton of sense, although I am picking Robert Woods as who they will sign. I do think they should take a long look at Elijah Moore this offseason simply because there is some higher upside in him than a 33-year-old Robert Woods would give you, probably for a 1 year, like a $3 million deal, a $2 million deal, whereas Moore probably goes for about 2 and 10, where you don't mind paying $10 million over the course of 2 years to a receiver that has a really high upside for you and fits your offense extremely well. But let's move to tight end, because this team desperately needs to have a tight end. They have George Kittle, one of the best in football by far. In fact, probably was, outside of Brock Bowers last year as a rookie, the best tight end in the entire league last year. But they cannot go into 2025 with Mason Pline and Jake Tunges and Braden Willis again. I know last year they tried to sign Brock Wright from the Lions. That didn't work out for them. The Lions had him as an RFA, so they got his rights back and they re-signed him to a deal that they liked. However, I think there are two names out there, and they're different players, and I think they would both fit that tight end 2 and tight end 3 role for this team, respectively. The first one, who I think fills that tight end 3 role extremely well for them, is former Philadelphia Eagle and Miami Dolphin Jack Stoll. Although he isn't the best run blocker, a pretty serviceable one. However, where you're going to find him as your tight end 3, his bread and butter really is a pass blocker. And I think if you're open to trading away Deebo Samuel, you have to have the forethought to either incorporate George Kittle more into your offense or want to be able to get Christian McCaffrey open as a receiver more often. And to do that, you have to have good pass blocking. And when I think about how the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowls, in big playoff games, have not really gotten George Kittle going, I think Jack Stoll, who walks into 2025 carrying, if you remove an outlier game against the Buccaneers last year, a 73.1 pass blocking grade, you talk about the inline tight end that can help George Kittle get open in the passing game and not force him to be that 6th offensive lineman in Super Bowls. I think Jack Stoll can be that for you. He's a bigger body guy, not much of a receiver, but you don't really need your tight end 3 to be that. I think Jack Stoll, as a pass blocking tight end 3, could do a ton of damage for San Francisco. But if he's your tight end 3, you have to find a tight end number 2. And I think it's really, really, really easy to look simply in Southern California and say, hey, who is a free agent on that team called the Los Angeles Rams, and why not covet one of their former 3rd-round picks? I think San Francisco should and will sign former Rams 3rd-round pick Hunter Long this offseason. I think Hunter Long would be an excellent fit to back up George Kittle. Again, former 3rd-round pick for a reason. He's 6'5", 253 pounds, albeit only caught 8 passes last year for 73 yards. It's not just that, though. He had a 73.4 pass blocking grade, and more importantly here, a 68.1 run blocking grade and 307 snaps. You poach one of your competitors' backup tight ends who they aren't using anymore, and another team's trash can be your treasure. I think Hunter Long makes a ton of sense for San Francisco. He can run block, he can pass block, and he has the body that he doesn't have to start early. He can be a backup for George Kittle and hopefully grow into the role. And if you get lucky, whether you sign Long or Stoll, hopefully it's Hunter Long. If you do so, and you draft the tight end in what has been one of the deeper tight end classes in recent years, you have 2 really good backup tight ends next year, which this team has not had, honestly, ever under Kyle Shanahan. So I think some underrated pieces to sign, and I am predicting, hopefully, fingers crossed, this team will sign Hunter Long, Los Angeles Rams former 3rd-round pick, as their tight end 2, or if you get lucky, your tight end 3 this off season. One question here by Benali P says, don't hate Tyler Lockett as a Band-Aid. the one thing about Lockett is that would he, one, sign with San Francisco? Two, I do think San Francisco will have interest in him. I would not be shocked if they signed him. I just wonder what the asking price may be. That's my only concern with him. I get he's an older player, but he still has a lot to give you. Hence why I'm going cheaper. I think they're going to draft somebody. And if they are as high on Tariq Owens as they say they are, then I don't think they're going to be in the market for Tyler Lockett. Renee here on Facebook asks, how about a Michael Mayer trade? I wouldn't mind that. I do think that there's no incentive for the Raiders to trade Mayer. We kind of talked about this on a previous podcast, I think last week, where I do think he fits a lot of what San Francisco likes to do. However, although it's on a really cheap deal, I don't think San Francisco wants to give away a early day 3 pick. Whether it's a 4th round pick or maybe on the off chance it's that 5th round pick they got for Deebo Samuel. They coveted that pick for a reason. They view this draft as deep. I don't think they'd want to trade draft pick compensation this year on day 1, day 2, or even early day 3. And that 5th round pick they got for Deebo is an early round 5 pick. It is the Saints' 5th round pick, not the Commanders' 5th round pick. So I like Michael Mayer. I think there's a lot of promise with him. That said, the Raiders could simply say, we don't need to move you. You're under contract for 2 more years. So I could really see the Raiders just saying, never mind. That's my kind of like problem with it. I don't think the Raiders actually are shopping him. I just think they're open to it, similar to how San Francisco is open to moving Brandon Ayuk, right? They'll do it for the right price, but I think the Raiders value a former 2nd round pick a little more than many think on the trade market this offseason. Moving along to the offensive line. A lot of people have been in my DMs, have been on Twitter, have been on Instagram, Facebook, have been snail mailing me, have been doing the old carrier pigeon saying, Sterling, the San Francisco 49ers better get an offensive lineman. And, well, I hate to break it to you, at least from a tackle perspective. I do think there are some pretty good tackle prospects in this year's draft on day 2, day 3. Marcus Mumbai from Purdue, I think, just screams Kyle Shanahan can play guard and tackle. That said, with Jalen Moore likely signing elsewhere, and this team currently only having 2 tackles on the roster in Trent Williams and Colton McKivitz, I think, and I really think they're going to do this, I think Charlie Heck could be back next year. It would not surprise me to watch them bring back some depth players they had play for them late last season once everybody got hurt. Matt Hennessy already got signed to a 2-year deal as a potential center option for this team. And I think that they are going to want that swing tackle, which not many tackles are swing tackles. Let's not assume they are. Charlie Heck can play right tackle and left tackle for you. I think that although he's a consistently below average player, I think he's consistent enough where, while obviously a clear downgrade from McKivitz or even Trent Williams, I think that when you look at who he played for, the Cardinals last year and San Francisco last year, if Charlie Heck is your worst offensive lineman, but your left guard's really good, and your center's okay, and your right guard's really good, and your right tackle's better than average, I don't think you mind it that much. Or if he's your right tackle, you don't care as much at all. And I think Charlie Heck will probably be brought back. If not, they'll probably go with Austin Pleasance. So I think one of those guys will get signed. They're kind of the pick your poison player. But I think Charlie Heck may be brought back this offseason. However, the bigger point of contention belongs to the center position. The Niners have been, and I've been part of the group of people that have been saying this, Jake Brendel sucks. He was terrible last offseason for this team. He was on his butt, on his ass, just looking back at the quarterback like, what happened? It's like, dude, you stink. That's what happened. Not picking up stunts and just so bad. No play strength, no mobility, no hip flexibility. Just a player that you are just looking at like you're a stick in the mud and you provide me nothing offensively, calling out the wrong protections, just doing things that honestly make him be the 42nd ranked center in football last year per PFF for every single reason I just listed. That said, we are getting a lot of Drew Dalman to San Francisco hype. And on paper, it makes all the sense in the world, right? He's from San Francisco, from the Bay Area. His dad played in San Francisco. I think he fits this system to a T. He's a really good player, a superb run blocker. And again, like all those things I'm saying, it fits San Francisco.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
A lot of it makes sense for him to be in San Francisco. Shanahan values a veteran center. You're probably not going to see him, draft one and say, yep, you're the starter day one. He wants a veteran guy out there. Dalman makes some sense. However, I do have some reservations. And I say this because Drew Dalman is the best center in a really bad center free agency class. He's the best center in a really bad draft class this year. Like all the way around, you're not going to find many great centers. I think Josh Myers is probably this draft class or this free agency class's second best center. He's also really bad. So while I do like Drew Dalman, while I think his run blocking fits in San Francisco, there are concerns that he kind of needs to have a really good left guard and a really good right guard. And while you may say, well, draft a left guard and you already had Dominic Pooney, and while some of that's true, I just don't know if San Francisco is viewing this as it's Drew Dalman or bust. I really think they're going to get outbid for him by the Falcons or the Bears. And you see Ben Johnson hot on the heels of fixing his interior offensive line. But unlike San Francisco, they got two of their guards already in place. While San Francisco likes Ben Bartch, I don't know if Drew Dalman playing next to Ben Bartch looks like the second highest paid center in football, which he's probably going to be when it's all said and done. I do think this team, unfortunately, likes Jake Brendel a little too much. I think Matt Hennessy was signed last year to a 2-year deal for a reason. I think he was brought in to be competition for Jake Brendel. They had Nick Zakelj. They have Drake Nugent. I think there's going to be an overall 4-man competition for center during training camp and OTAs. I just don't think San Francisco is going to sign Drew Dalman. They may want to, and again, it all makes sense, right? Familial ties, the run blocking, the needs all there, right? He's from the area. I just think San Francisco may look elsewhere, simply knowing that they like Jake Brendel more than I think the fan base does. Now, would I sign Drew Dalman? He's a big upgrade from Jake Brendel. That said, I do think you may be able to find more bang for your buck, maybe attacking the left guard position. Now, they have Ben Bartch, who I think they like a lot, but got hurt last year, rather unproven. I have a sneaky feeling that Spencer Burford might become the swing tackle. I know I already mentioned Austin Pleasance and Charlie Heck, but would anybody be shocked to see Spencer Burford become the swing tackle next year? I know I wouldn't be. And I think that would lend to the need of having a left guard. And I think that in a pretty bad center draft class where you're probably not going to see one go for the first 3 to 4 rounds, I think they should attack the left guard position with all they got. And I think there is one guy out there who makes all the sense in the world, and that is current Pittsburgh Steelers free agent left guard, James Daniels. Now, currently, according to Spotrac, his market value is $7.8 million per year, so roughly $8 million per year. However, former second-round draft pick from the Chicago Bears, only 28 years old, got hurt last year. It cost him most of the season, but when he was healthy, had a 92.5 run blocking grade. That was the highest of his career. He had about a 70 over his career prior to this past season, so rather consistent over his entire 7-year career. And I think when you see him peaking this late into his career, you're like, yep, I want that guy. Probably not going to have to give him, this 4 or 5 year deal. Give him a 3-year deal. Give him $8 million per year, $24 million. The NFL needs left guards. Your offenses have to have interior offensive linemen pay up for a player like James Daniels, well above average pass blocker. He can play left guard. He can play right guard. I am all on board of if this team is dead set on Matt Hennessy and Jake Brendel, then pivot to a left guard position like James Daniels. Really good player, phenomenal run blocker, good enough pass blocker. And if he's next to Trent Williams or he's next to, Jake Brendel, Matt Hennessy, you're going to see an instant upgrade from your guards who can pull. He's someone that can get out in space. He has the agility. He has the hip flexibility. He will be an improvement from Aaron Banks, who was terrible last year. And I think if they can sign James Daniels and have Dominic Pooney for the next 3 seasons, you are going to see a more ferocious offense get back to smash mouth football and not have to pay, $14 million a year for, let's say, Drew Dalman. This team wants to save money and wants to, I guess you can say, more smartly, if you will, or be more judicious with their money. I think getting James Daniels makes a lot more sense than trying to sign Drew Dalman. But that's up to them. What do you think down below in the comments? And before we get to the defense, I want to let you know that if you want to perform like the GOAT, Jerry Rice, you want that healthy coffee alternative, whether you're a person like myself, a superstar athlete, or working your 9 to 5. You want to get yourself a can of GOAT Fuel. Click my link down below. Save yourself 10% off your purchase and perform like the GOAT by grabbing yourself a 6-pack or an 8-pack of GOAT Fuel in the description down below. I do want to get to the YouTube chat for a hot second before we go to the defense, because a lot of defensive conversation to be had in the near future. Keys says here, do you believe Niners ownership wants short-term extensions for Purdy in case it doesn't work out, get rid of Brock and Shanny when their contracts run out? I do wonder that maybe a big point of contention during negotiations, and this is kind of hinting and kind of looking more towards what Schefter said this past week, because he mentioned a 3-year deal. He mentioned the franchise tag twice and this year for Brock Purdy. I do wonder if Brock maybe is asking for a 4-year contract and they're saying, no, we'll give you 3 years. Now, if there is an extension done, that is technically a 4-year commitment because this year would not be included in that deal per se. So you're committing yourself to Brock Purdy till about 2029, 2030. And so I would not be shocked to see this team looking at deals like Hargrave, who signed 4 years, lasted 1.5 years, if you will. Devo signed for 3 years, lasted 2 years. Brandon Ayuk, who I know they seemingly hate nowadays, he lasted 7 games and may never come back. Who knows? So I think they want to protect themselves from, yes, committing these massive contracts financially, but also how long they may be. I would not be shocked to learn San Francisco only wants to sign Brock for 3 years. And that 3 years is 3 years in $150 million. And that's it. And they're saying, look, Brock, we love you, but we don't love you when you're 29 years old, 28 years old. So I could see that being an issue for them and being a sticking point. I don't think the intention is to limit or hinder or stymie any production from him. I do think that they believe in Kyle and they believe in Brock, but from a business standpoint, you have to protect yourself. It's almost it's not a smart business move to sign a 5-year deal for a quarterback that you may not believe in past the age of 28, 29. So I can see that being a factor. I can see them saying, well, Christian McCaffrey was hurt last year. You weren't the same player. You didn't have Ayuk, didn't have Debo for a lot of it. The offensive line wasn't great, and you really didn't raise you didn't make us better, per se. I can see that being a factor, although, again, I think that it's really, really, really going to be more about the money and how long. But I can see them saying 3 years is kind of the hard cap for us. But Ollie P asks, how long was the Jimmy Garoppolo contract? Was it 5 years? Let's see. He signed it in 2018. So 2018, 2019, 2020. It's a 4-year deal. 4 years. Because he's got hurt in 2018. He played in 2019, got hurt in 2020, played in 2021. No. It's a 5-year deal. Yeah, 5 years. 5 years for Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not sure how much the money was looking back in totality, but it's a 5-year deal. I don't know. You never know what the NFL will give you. But I do think that the Niners are going to pivot from Drew Dalman because Key says here he ain't worth it. He's too expensive to not be a good pass protector. I think you nailed it on the head right there. There are limitations to Drew Dalman's game where he does have a little bit of that. If you want to use the quarterback terminology for a center, he does a lot of it really well, but there are some things that keep him from being elite. I think that's the big drawback to him. And I think San Francisco sees that. I think they're open to letting teams like the Bears and the Falcons pay him. I do think that their smarter move is to go and get James Daniels. You have Trent, you have James Daniels, you have a really good left tackle, a Hall of Fame left tackle. You have James Daniels, who was phenomenal last year in a short stint playing for the Steelers, but has been pretty good over his entire career. You have your left side done. You have Dominic Pooney. If you get lucky by any say, and let's say Armin Membu is at 11, well, then you have a right tackle, and Colt McKivitz becomes your swing tackle again. Like, that sounds like this perfect world, but I do think there is a way that's actually possible, and I think if you're really smart for San Francisco to protect their franchise quarterback whenever he is signed, and as Niners Throwback says, hit that like button, faithful, because we are getting to the defensive side of the football, and let's talk about the interior defensive line. This team is going to let Javon Hargrave leave. They're going to cut or trade Maliek Collins, and they have 3 currently active defensive tackles: Evan Anderson, Jordan Elliott, and Kalia Davis. I don't know about you. I don't like any of those guys, maybe outside of Evan Anderson, because he's really, really young. That said, I do think there are 2 players this team should target, or at least one of them they should target. One of them I think they will target, and they probably shouldn't be targeting. Let's start with the player I wouldn't target. That is Javon Kinlaw. There has been too many rumors out there reconnecting Javon Kinlaw to San Francisco. 30 pressures last year, 5 sacks, a 50.8 run defense grade. Not good. Not good, but was the most durable he ever has been last year. Saleh liked him enough from what he showed in San Francisco, which wasn't much at all, to sign him with the Jets. I can see Saleh saying, give him 1 year, Kyle. He can be the 4th guy on our depth chart. We're good to go there. However, I wouldn't do that deal, but I think they are going to have interest in him. That said, I think they should have more interest in a cheaper player that is more productive, which feeds into what the organizational shift is in San Francisco. Cheaper, younger, more durable. I think Levi Onwuzurike, the Detroit Lions defensive tackle, should be who they want. He had 47 pressures, 3 sacks, a 66.5 run defense grade, and is a former 2021 second-round pick. And unlike Javon Kinlaw, who has a $7 million per year market value according to Spotrac, Onwuzurike has a $4.5 million per year evaluation according to Spotrac. So I'm saving you half the money per year, if you will, and I'm giving you more production from your interior defensive line, a player that can grow into a 3-down player for you as a pass rusher, as a run defender. And if you are of the idea that, hey, we have 11 draft picks, if we can get some more picks on day 2, or you want to trade you want to go trade up and down the draft board, you can get 2 to 3 interior defensive linemen and fix that group. Even if at pick 11 you want Walter Nolan or you want Kenneth Grant or somebody like that, San Francisco could pair in Moonzariki with one of those picks and have a really formidable starting 4 front defensive linemen. I would love this signing. However, I don't think they'll do it. I think they are going to try to sign Javon Kinlaw and bring him back to San Francisco. I hate not sticking to my guns here. I hate that I have to go against myself, but I just really think Salah's like, I love Kinlaw so much, and I think my prediction will be the San Francisco 49ers are going to bring back Javon Kinlaw. I know there's talks about, DJ Jones. I think he's going to be too pricey. I would love it. I get it. I've talked about him plenty of times here. I just don't know if, Matt Maliek said today he's not going to be as pricey as he was 2 or 3 years ago. Well, I don't know if that's right, but we'll certainly see. I think DJ Jones may get $14 million per year. And I don't think San Francisco wants to pay another defensive tackle, say it's 3 years, for $14 million per year. That's a nice chunk of change for a player that maybe you don't really want to have around for that long of a time. Again, I would go Moonzariki, cheaper, more valuable to me, a highly productive player, but I do think my prediction, although I hate it so much, so don't hate me for this, I think they're going to get Javon Kinlaw back in 2025. So to kind of bring you back up to speed here, I think they'll sign Joe Flacco as the backup quarterback, Robert Woods as their wide receiver veteran this offseason, Hunter Long as their tight end 2 or 3. They're going to sign James Daniels as their left guard this offseason and go bring back Javon Kinlaw. Some of those I really love. Some of those, as in Javon Kinlaw, not a fan too much of, but I digress. Let's move on to the edge group because the San Francisco 49ers have some competition for Joey Bosa. And I am someone that has said, I think this move happens, although I think it's really important to discuss what's happening currently. From my understanding, Joey Bosa wants to come to San Francisco, wants to play with Nick Bosa. However, there is some pull to come back to Florida, where he lives, where his father, John, played with the Dolphins. Again, the Bosas live in Florida. They work out in Florida. There wouldn't have to be this, coast-to-coast travel during the year from summertime to the NFL season. He can stay at home wherever he wants to. And I do think that there is some realistic possibility that Joey Bosa picks the Dolphins over San Francisco. However, I do think he will sign with the San Francisco 49ers, but because of the interest the Dolphins may have, and I also wouldn't be shocked to learn that the Lions or the Eagles or a team maybe like the Falcons have interest in Joey Bosa. I think he signs in San Francisco, but on the off chance that Joey Bosa goes to the Dolphins, I wanted to give you my backup plan. Yes, it involves drafting an edge rusher early, whether it's round 1 or 2. That said, if San Francisco does not sign Joey Bosa, and honestly, even if they sign Joey Bosa and trade Leonard Floyd away, which I don't think happens, but if it does, I think this defense with Robert Saleh and Kyle Shanahan and Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa and whoever they get on the interior, I think it would be a very smart move to try to acquire and sign Josh Uche, the former New England Patriot and Kansas City Chief. I think Uche, who is going to be 27 this year, didn't have a great season with the Chiefs and the Patriots, had a down year. But I think his best football can be in front of him with Robert Saleh. Wasn't a great fit with the Chiefs, and the Patriots were just terrible for most of last year. But he's a really good run defender, a 70.2 run defense grade. He'll set the edge for you. And when you talk about creating a rotation where Joey Bosa is probably only on the field for third downs and on big plays, I think Josh Uche can be a cheap $6 million per year player, $8 million per year player at 27 years old. Give him a 2-year deal, give him a 3-year deal. I would love if they signed Josh Uche. I think he'd be cheap. I think he'd be young. I think he would factor into more of what they can do, especially if they sign Joey Bosa. But if they don't sign Joey Bosa, then you have to find somebody else. You give me Floyd and Uche and Nick Bosa and a draft pick and Yetur Gross-Matos, you can see the vision start to come in to play there, and you can start to see it. That said, I really think they're going to sign Joey Bosa. I think it'll happen sometimes this week. I think if Joey doesn't sign, Nick is going to be so pissed at him. I think he'll be like, what the heck, man? Like, this is our one final chance. However, the income tax comes into play. The state tax comes into play. Maybe there are some financial things, but if you're Joey, play 1 year in San Francisco, play 1 year in Miami, and call it a career. That's what I would do, and I think he will do that. I think the Dolphins are in no place to contend next year. I think they're in a worse place than San Francisco is, and that's saying a lot, knowing how bad San Francisco was last year. So I think Joey Bosa comes to San Francisco. Even if the Dolphins give him more money, I do think there is a push from his family and his brother to say, look, give us 1 year. We haven't played together since high school. How common is it for brothers to play with each other on the opposite ends of a defense on the defensive line, being the bookends of the edge rushing room? It almost never happens. Let's make some history. And I think Joey Bosa comes to San Francisco, which brings us to the linebacker room. Niners media says here that DJ Jones, and you are correct, is staying with the Denver Broncos. So I said it was unlikely for a reason. I didn't think it was happening. So according to Jeremy Fowler, he says that, as I said, around $13 million per year for DJ Jones. Man, I'm good. I'm real good. So DJ Jones going back to Denver for about $13 million per year. What can I say? But let's move on to the linebacker position because there are 3 names I think make some sense for San Francisco. One of them being Dre Greenlaw. There's a report tonight saying that the Niners are among 3 other teams that want to sign Dre Greenlaw, that the Niners really want to bring him back, and they're trying the hardest they can. However, while not knowing who the other 3 teams are, we can obviously speculate probably the Cowboys, the Texans maybe, the Titans probably. I also wouldn't be shocked to hear about the Commanders. Pair him with Bobby Wagner and let Greenlaw be the number 1 guy, although I think the other 3 make more sense than the Commanders. I think they're going to bring back Dre Greenlaw. I haven't really been on that train. I don't think it's the smartest move in the book. If you believe what Albert Breer said today, that he's probably going to get like 3 years, like I think it was like 22 or something like that. It was a deal where the money wasn't the issue. It was about $8 million per year. It was just committing 3 years to a player that you don't know is going to be healthy. There is so much boom when it comes to Dre Greenlaw, but there's also a lot of bust if you commit a long-term contract to him. And I think that San Francisco has been preaching, like, we want to get durable. We want to make sure we're getting more, I guess you can say, a boom for our buck. And so I don't know if Greenlaw makes sense. They're trying hard. He means so much to their defense. But I don't know if he signs, but my prediction is they are going to do enough to make him sign. I think he wants to come back to San Francisco. Yes, he wants to be his own guy. I just don't know if San Francisco wants to give him a 3-year deal. However, I do think when it's all said and done, Dre Greenlaw will be back in some form or fashion, whether it's a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, or it's like a 1-for-1, if you will, how the NBA does things. But let's talk about 2 other options I think are viable for San Francisco this offseason if Dre Greenlaw does not return, albeit, again, my prediction is Dre Greenlaw does come back. Although, again, it's going to be tough. The other unlikely option, but I do think makes some sense, is trying to rekindle the relationship with Eric Kendricks, who was supposed to be Devondre Campbell last year for this team, supposed to be the bridge to Dre Greenlaw. Eric Kendricks was really good last year for the Dallas Cowboys. 33 years old, not going to want big money, not going to want some long contract, but is an overall good player. A 78.3 run defense grade, a 62.7 coverage grade, a 65.7 tackling grade. I think a 1-year plug-and-play for Greenlaw's absence makes a ton of sense. I think you get in and you start to use Bethune and Winters more. You draft a linebacker. I think Kendricks could be kind of a band-aid option for them for 1 year to give them more time, but also make them still competitive on defense. And while Greenlaw is a higher upside player, just his health being a big question, I think Kendricks could give you more consistent play across the board, knowing that he's usually a pretty healthy player and durable player during the NFL season.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses. I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
My one wild card, though. My one wild card is Troy Dye from the Los Angeles Chargers. Former 4th-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings. He was a starter last year for the Chargers. He is a phenomenal run defender. This team needs run defense in every form and fashion. He had a 77.3 run defense grade last year. A solid tackler, 67.9 tackling grade last year. The coverage grade is going to leave some room for improvement, that being a 53.5 coverage grade and a 107.5 passer rating allowed. But I do think if you sign Troy Dye, you are more open to the idea of D. Winters being your number 2 linebacker. I think that's the important part to mention here. I think he'd be in a rotation with a rookie or Bethune or Winters next year. But I also think that being a former safety in college with the Oregon Ducks, I think Troy Dye could be a pretty good player inside a system. And here's the kicker. When you talk about defense, linebackers, and safeties and cornerbacks, you have to have special team ability. This team is losing Devondre Campbell for all the good reasons in the entire world. They're losing and cutting Demetrius Flanagan-Falls. I think getting Troy Dye in for a 1-year, a cheap deal. He has 391 special team snaps last year. I think that would be great to get in. Just be a backup for us. Be a spot starter here or there. Not going to be this, high potential player, but he'll give you a higher floor than most. You know what you're going to get. I think Troy Dye is kind of the under-the-radar sneak signing they could pick up if Greenlaw leaves. In fact, even if Greenlaw comes back, go sign Troy Dye too. He lifts your room up the floor higher and higher and higher. If you have Warner and Greenlaw and Winters and Troy Dye and Bethune and a rookie, that's great. And let's not forget the ultimate wild card nobody's talking about. That is Curtis Robinson, who tore his ACL last year. Nobody's talking about Curtis Robinson at all. Nobody. And go back to the preseason. He was having an excellent preseason. I would not be shocked to watch San Francisco sit back and if they lose Dre Greenlaw, trot out D. Winters and Curtis Robinson and Bethune and maybe a rookie. I think there is a world where Curtis Robinson is I don't want to say a big-time contributor, but is more of a contributor than people want to give him credit for because he was penciled in to be a big player for them as a depth piece. And I think had he not got hurt, probably would have been this team's number 3 linebacker and probably would have started next to Campbell and Fred Warner last year before he tore his ACL. So don't forget Curtis Robinson is still on this team and I think could be a player for them during the year next year, depending on how his season goes. Alrighty, let's move on to the cornerback room here and get to defensive backs, because the Niners have, I think, 2 of the best cornerbacks that are young in football. And when you have people like Deommodore Lenoir, who's locking down fools, who's talking trash and being great, and you have Renardo Green, who I think the ceiling is so high for him, I would not be shocked to learn at some point in time he's a Pro Bowler a couple years in a row. I think he can be that good of a player for you on the outside and the boundary. You also have 2 guys that can also play nickel as well. So you have versatility there depending on your matchups. In my mind, I think it is behooving of San Francisco to draft their next cornerback. That said, there are 3 people I think could fit in San Francisco next year as a cornerback in the room somewhere. I think you have potential starters here. You also have the guys that are your 5th or 6th cornerback round out your room that I think can make some sense. The first one, I think everybody would love this. It is a boom and bust signing. It is a high reward with very little risk involved. Why don't we talk about bringing back Emmanuel Moseley? I think there is a world where Emmanuel Moseley becomes this new version of Jason Verrett, where he has so many leg injuries, and you just love the guy. You want him to get healthy. You want him to be on the field. You miss watching him play. He didn't play much last year for the Lions, has only played 2 games since 2023. When he was in San Francisco, and he was on the team in 2019, and 2020, and 2021, this defense was amazing with him as the opposite corner of Richard Sherman and Verrett and others in San Francisco. I would love to see them bring back Emmanuel Moseley. He's a bargain bin potential starter who's not going to cost you anything. Your team loves him, and I think he'd be really good to get in the room, where again, there's a lot of boom, there's some big bust, but almost no risk attached to his name. He compete with Darrell Luter Jr. and probably an incoming rookie and somebody else. I think Emmanuel Moseley gives you starting potential, albeit maybe being your cornerback 4 or 5, if you can make your roster. Just take a chance. I think the story could be tremendous. A guy who was great with you when he was a rookie. He was on that team in 2019, that darn 3rd and 15, when you're like, what the heck just happened? I would love them to bring back Emmanuel Moseley just to see what's left. 1 year, give him like $1 million, give him incentives, just say, hey, we'll give you a chance. We know when you're healthy, you can be a really good player. Bring back Emmanuel Moseley for 1 year just to make me feel good about this offseason as it progresses. 2 other probably more viable names on the market this year. I don't think you're going to hear about DJ Reed and Carlton Davis. I don't think any of those guys are coming to San Francisco. I think they are going to, yes, try to pluck some former Sala and DeMeco Ryans players from the Jets and the Texans, and I think that begins with Miles Bryant from the Houston Texans, 5'9", 192 pounds. He just screams nickelback. And this team, I think, could use a viable backup nickelback if Lenoir happens to be the starter on the interior next year. If Lenoir happens to go down, knock on wood he doesn't, he's a great player. I think Miles Bryant, albeit is a clear backup in the NFL, could give you something. A really good run defender, 70 run defense grade for a 5'9" player. Had some injuries last year, wasn't the greatest tackler because of that, but a 62.7 coverage grade. Previous seasons, a 63 tackle grade. He's a pure slot cornerback, and I think when you talk about knowing a defense, knowing a system, Also had 120 special teams snaps last year. Again, you have to round out your room with improved special teams and guys you think could start for you in a pinch. Although Miles Bryant is a clear backup, I think a tinier player that knows the defense, is a good tackler and a good run defender, that goes a long way in the NFL. And I think while there is some coverage issues there, I think in a defense like this, if you get Joey Bosa, Josh Uche, or you fix the interior of the defensive line, it's only going to help your cornerbacks play better and force quarterbacks to make errant throws, which leads to takeaways, turnovers, and a coverage grade going from 63 to about 68. And everything looks better when it comes to a Miles Bryant signing in that case. The other guy I think is my prediction of this trio is Brandon Echols, the New York Jets cornerback. He's 5'10", 175 pounds, played under Saleh the last couple of years, played 406 snaps last season. Not a great run defender last year. However, in 2023 and 2022, hit an average grade about 73, so overall a pretty good run defender in previous seasons. However, he's a terrible tackler. I don't know how you're a great run defender, but a terrible tackler. Over the last 2 years, a 20.5 and a 35.7% missed tackle rate. That is terrifying, but I do think there is some value in a player that has a 185 special team snaps as your sixth cornerback. So again, I would love to get Emmanuel Moseley. I think Miles Bryant makes a ton of sense. I just think Brandon Echols gives you more versatility. He can play inside, he can play outside. He's bigger, he's stronger. I think playing with Brant Boyer and Saleh is going to open the door more for him to become a San Francisco 49er this offseason. So my prediction is Brandon Echols is the cornerback signing this offseason for San Francisco, which brings us to our last positional group of the show. That is the safety room. And I want to go all the way back up here to Renee Rodriguez's question, I think, on Facebook. It was one of the first questions of the entire show. And they brought up, Sterling, what do you think about Julian Blackmon, safety from the Colts? Do you think the 49ers are going to be interested in Julian Blackmon? Let me tell you this. I think Julian Blackmon is not going to have a very big market, but I do think San Francisco is going to be involved in said market. However, while I do think there are many ties to the San Francisco 49ers and Julian Blackmon, right? Former third-round pick. They had him for a visit last offseason. He didn't sign in San Francisco, but he knows Gus Bradley, who is now in San Francisco as his former DC with the Colts. The only problem is I do think he's a starter if you sign him. However, maybe they don't buy into Jair Brown. Maybe they want to play some three safety sets. I think that was, and I know health played a factor. I do wonder why San Francisco doesn't play more three safety sets. And I think to play three safety sets, and maybe this is why, you have to have a really good coverage free safety. And Julian Blackmon is one of the better coverage free safeties in the NFL. Had a 73.5 coverage grade last year. Not a great run defender. His most recent years have been in the 50s when it comes to PFF, but his first 3 years, he was above 75 in the run defense grade department. He had 75 tackles last year, a 91.5 passer rating allowed when targeted, and 3 interceptions. So I think they're going to be interested. My only concern is Julian Blackmon may say, if I go to San Francisco, I want to start, which leads to I want starting caliber money. And I think San Francisco is a little more comfortable with Jair Brown starting next year next to Malik Mustafa. I also think they can go draft a safety. Makuba from Texas makes so much sense. Andrew Makuba makes so much sense from Texas, where I think it could almost erase the need for a starting free safety. And so I do think San Francisco will have interest in Blackmon, but I think the price tag may be too high. I think the fit, although it's there, I think he may want to be a starter. And I don't think San Francisco views him as an instant starter at free safety. I think they do view that as Jair Brown's job to lose coming into next year. The other player I have at safety is it is Houston Texans safety M.J. Stewart. Stewart being a former second-round pick of the Houston Texans, played 99 snaps last year with Houston, had an 81.3 run defense grade, an 82.7 tackling grade, and a 60.7 coverage grade. Not great for the coverage skills, but I think as a run defender and a tackler, that's what you love. And I think Stewart more projects as a special teamer. I think someone where I would not be shocked to watch them cut George Odom this offseason and replace him with a player like MJ Stewart, who is kind of your fourth safety, a guy you don't really want starting for you, but played almost 400 special teams snaps last year. And again, when you're a really good tackler and a really good run defender, that means you're really good at stopping players in open space. I think Stewart makes a ton of sense for San Francisco, especially if they're open to the idea of cutting Odom, having Brown, Mustafa, and drafting Makuba or a safety in this year's draft. But that is not my prediction. My final prediction of the San Francisco 49ers free agency show is free safety from Cal Berkeley, who played under Robert Saleh with the New York Jets and is a former third-round pick. That is Ashton Davis. I think Ashton Davis is a clear lock for the San Francisco 49ers. There's a need, there's a fit, there's a want, and there is a desire. Where there is a wilt, there is an Ashton Davis waiting to sign for the San Francisco 49ers. An excellent run defender, a 73.4 PFF grade, really good in coverage. Well, maybe solid in coverage. A 67.8 coverage grade, and a pretty good tackler, a 70.7 coverage grade. Kind of gives you a more complete free safety in your room. Coming off arguably the best year of his career as a rotational safety, 23 tackles, a 73.7 passer rating allowed when targeted, and 2 interceptions. He's also played 282 special teams snaps, so you're getting special teams versatility and a player that can start for you at free safety next year if you're in a pinch, or in case Jair Brown struggles, you don't mind tossing Ashton Davis out there to be your free safety to maybe help him get back to his form and what he was in 2023. So, this is my free agency prediction show. I'll run down every single name for you. In the safety room, I see them signing Ashton Davis. He knows Brant Boyer, played under Saleh. He knows this defense. He's from California. I can see Ashton Davis signing and being the third safety in that room alongside Odom, who I think may get cut, Mustafa, and Jair Brown. In the cornerback room, I have Saleh and Boyer going back to the well out there in New York City and signing Brandon Echols as their fifth or sixth cornerback and a special teams, specialist, if you will. At linebacker, I think they're going to find a way to bring back Dre Greenlaw. I don't know if I do that, but I think Dre Greenlaw will be back. If not, look out for Troy Dye as the backup option for them. They're going to go sign Joey Bosa, I think. They're going to bring back Javon Kinlaw, even though I hate that. They're going to sign James Daniels and not sign Drew Dalman. I think they should sign Hunter Long, and they will sign Hunter Long this offseason, and they're going to go out and bring in Robert Woods and Joe Flacco. I read you every single name who they're going to sign, and I'll tell you now, no way am I talking about kickers. I don't care about kickers until I have to care about kickers. Jake Moody or not, go sign an undrafted guy. You want to bring in 10 undrafted free agents? Be my guest. Just don't draft one and don't sign one. Whatever you do, for the love of God, don't spend big money on a kicker this offseason. Please, please don't. And Eric Soley says, Josh Myers is on my wish list. I don't like Josh Myers. I think I would avoid centers with like they're the plague. Not Dalman, not Josh Myers, nobody. You got Hennessy. Improved left guard. You will see a better version of Jake Brendel, which still may suck, but my God, I would not sign any center this season. But tell me down below. An hour and a half of a free agency prediction show. Who do you like? Who do you not like? Who do you think this team should sign? Do you agree with me? If you don't, put who you think they should sign down below in the comments. Don't forget to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. Use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com. And also, get yourself a can of goat fuel down below in the description and save yourself 10% off your purchase. I want to say thank you to Papa J, Benali P. Niner Media reached 1,000 followers on X tonight. Kudos to you, Niner Media. Eric Soley, Niners Throwback, Keys, so many more in the YouTube chat. 916_49ers. Michael Cananzaro, Strawberry Reacts also in here as well. All of you, hope you have a great night. Enjoy NFL free agency. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Renee says, great show. Right back at you, Renee. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, until next time, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.